Hello, and welcome to a video review of the movie The Beach Bum, which is a Matthew McConaughey vehicle directed by Harmony Korine. And this is for the Piano Man Pictures website. And my name is Ben, and this is Trip.
Hey.
And we just walked out of a screening of The Beach Bum, starring Matthew McConaughey, Isla Fisher, Snoop Doggy Dogg, Jimmy Buffett, Martin Lawrence, and Bertie Higgins. And Trip, what were your initial thoughts, and also a plot summary, if you would?
Yeah, my original thoughts were that I was very happy that Bertie Higgins was actually in the movie, doing his hit Key Largo. But a plot synopsis is kind of difficult. It's more of a character study of the main character, Moondog, who's played by Matthew McConaughey. And his character, he kind of floats through life. He apparently at one time had a level of talent that's, I guess, pretty well known, that they kind of make note a few times throughout the movie that people know who he is. They appreciate his talent. They like what he did as a writer. But he was a poet, and it's kind of following him through this kind of weird series of events that kind of occur, and he kind of floats through all of them throughout the movie, and it just kind of goes from riches to rags to riches. It's all kind of just very it's very much a drug movie, in that, there's not much holding it together, but yeah, so a plot summary is pretty difficult, but that's kind of an overview. I don't know if there's something that I missed there. I mean,
no, it sounded pretty good.
He's friends with Jimmy Buffett,
yeah,
and Snoop Dogg, who doesn't play Snoop Dogg, but I'm pretty sure Jimmy Buffett is Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, they mentioned my name, and Bertie Higgins plays.
And Bertie Higgins is Bertie Higgins. Thank God. And yeah, it was. I really liked it. I don't know if we're going to talk about that yet, but I really liked it a lot.
Yeah. Why did you like it?
Well, it's pretty much what I look for it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's pretty much what I look for in a movie. As far as character study, not a lot, there's not a lot of consequences that he faces. It's not really I don't really know that it's trying to tell you or teach you anything. And all those kind of things I usually like in movies. I don't really, if things are overly plotted, I usually check out. If I like a good character study, I like a lot of like 70s New Hollywood. That's kind of really in my sweet spot as far as movies that I love. And this kind of had some of those elements. Like I said, it's not a perfect movie. There are certain performances that kind of fall flat. We can get into that. But, yeah, I really liked it.
I think a good question for me to start with was, what, if you're saying 70s, which is, character studies and, maybe some sort of darkness to the ideas in the film.
Yeah.
And then there's the 80s, which I guess represents for us cartoony sleaze.
Sure.
And then there's the 90s, which I guess would be more, I guess you could connect that with like the Sunny Florida or Harmony Korine's first films that he ever made. I kept wondering, like, there's so much in this film. I would say that I enjoyed the film.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that it was like, it made me think of a lot of other things. I don't know how to put this. Someone online in some review said something like, Harmony Korine is a exploitation director disguised as an art house director. And I think they probably made the same point, but I think the point needs to be made with this movie is that there doesn't end up being a whole lot of art house. It's more like just maybe, like, it's not a bro comedy, but it has some of the same affinities that would have.
Mm-hmm.
And it has some wonderful, you really captures the vibe of drinking and enjoying yourself and smoking pot. And
right.
It's a lovely ode to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it touches on maybe like a deeper idea of like, like we first see him push a guy playing a tuba off a pier and he doesn't really think about it or care about it. And then, there's also there's a pretty consistent idea in what Korine is doing when he has, towards the end of the film, this is not a spoiler, but there's a character who says, the thing I love about money is you can fuck with people and they just have to take it. And that's as close as a coherent statement the film makes
thesis,
about anything. And that's just so slight and so barely there. So it's like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I thought that too when he said that. I was thinking, okay, is that the point the movie's trying to make in some way? But I don't really even know if that was the case, because there's moments in the movie where he doesn't have money, yet he still is the same. He still does the same things. Not having money does result in him facing some level of consequences that he probably wouldn't have to face otherwise. But he's still the same person, and so that's what I was. That was one thing that line in the movie kind of made me think. Okay, are they trying to say that this is what the point of the movie is? But yeah, they do go out of their way to kind of to show him as doing unlikable things or doing kind of despicable things at times.
He literally lives like a beach bum, as the title of the movie suggests, but we learn fairly early on that he's married to a millionairess played by Isla Fisher, who is having an affair with the character, Snoop Dogg's character.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of switches back and forth between carousing in like Key West, and then also going to her. I think, was it Miami where she lives? I
assume
she's on the mainland.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. I enjoy a lot of it. I guess one thing to say about it would be that there was a little bit like, you have like some jokes that again wouldn't be out of place in like a 80s bro comedy. You have like a endless chorus of like naked women behind, and in Spring Breakers you had this kind of like negative idea where it's like it's a cartoon, and a lot of people pointed out that it was sending up this idea that excess would be sustainable or something that someone could do, and that it would be this tragic ballad told by these girls. And in some way he was poking fun at that. But this movie seems less scolding. It made me think of the Florida Project positively. I like the Florida Project a lot. And that movie has like these kids endlessly playing and being mean and being unlikable for 5-year-olds in this poor income housing project in Florida. And then there's this ending where they have to face the realities of their economic situation and how they get mistreated. And this movie is a bit of a fantasy because it's like McConaughey is rich. He starts out rich, and then there's a small threat to his money. And then he deals with that in some comic ways.
And I think that's where your 70s, 80s, and 90s comment, I think, is very spot on. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's because I was kind of hoping that there would be some level of an 80s teen sex comedy or a sex comedy from that era. And there were elements of that, there's an attorney who's telling him, in order to receive your inheritance, you must finish your novel. And he's trying to say, well, no, it's a book of poetry. But there's like little silly things like that. They're just from that genre of like some stupid thing that you have to do in order to reach a greater level of freedom that you want to achieve. And I think things like that are perfectly out of that era, and I think I really appreciated that. And then you have the 70s character study, and then the 90s kind of I don't know if indie sort of shocking the squares kind of things.
I
don't know,
and specifically vehemence towards squares. There's a one thing that's unusual about McConaughey, I was expecting him to be more of a hippie type, but he's an ex-soldier. There are a lot of ex-soldiers. I think Jimmy Buffett mentions being an ex-soldier. I don't know if that's true. I must be. But, and several other people like, Martin Lawrence says I have my balls shot off in Nam. Just like a little bit like, and I don't know if does the age work out?
Shout out to Martin Lawrence. He was very good in the movie.
He was he was the MVP. He came in, did a great scene, and left. But like,
great.
There's a character, he calls all the people he doesn't like limp dicks. He says, various things which, again, won't be out of that place in the 80s movie. There's things where he's a little bit more aggressive. He's a little bit, I mean, it's obviously he's meant to be a bit of a shit, but he's a likable shit. And, there's an editing thing that where you'll jump back and forth in the movie. Like, we have to remind ourselves who, and the person who he calls Limp Dick is his daughter's fiance at his wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And basically there's this this jumping back and forth. So he mentions that man later, and they show him on the screen like in a trailer to remind you, as if you had forgotten who he was from 30 minutes ago, which may fit in with Pot, but it really seemed like very strange editing.
Mm-hmm.
And that only was really great at one point in the movie where there's a montage of Is That They're All That Is by like Peggy Lee, and you start to notice during it that we're jumping back and forth in time, and then there's an event in there which kills a character, and you realize, oh wait, when we get to the end of this montage, one of these characters will be dead, and that was very clever and very engaging.
I'm a big fan of the genre of like a very like loosely connected kind of series of scenes. It's like I said, a drug kind of movie. Like, I liked Inherent Vice a lot. I don't know how you felt about that one.
I hated Inherent Vice.
Okay.
But I might like it if I saw it again.
Yeah, I really love that movie. But movies like that in general, where it's just everything is kind of... In this movie, it kind of almost makes it pretty... it really hits it on the head as far as some of the scenes are actually shot where it's just kind of foggy and maybe out of focus or something. You would know more about the technical aspect.
Not really. I read an online review of it before I intended to see it, and it said something about Benuel, and Benuel did this kind of stuff better. It's just like a lot of stuff where he just casually toss off the divide between the rich and the poor. If that was any of Harmony Korine's intention, motorcyclists are passing us, but like, you casually show these homeless people walk into a mansion, which is very similar to something from the film Viridiana, and I think I didn't make that comparison. I think it was like an AV Club review that made that comparison. But basically, I like that aspect of it, and I liked the cruelty of it and the way in which it showed that I don't know, but in real life, if you get sentenced to rehab or jail, McConaughey would end up in jail. He wouldn't get, like the idea. You said something not fairly recently, which is that a lot of relationships are transactional, whether or not we mean them to be or not.
Right.
And I think that was the best thing that this movie did, was just play on that, where everyone treated him as famous or rich, and they responded to him obsequiously unless they were threatened by him in some way. And the movie probably was positing in a kind of a good old boy kind of way that it's really your demeanor that saves you and how you act and the fun that you have. And then it might also, with a tiny caveat, that you're blind to how you're cruel or mean to others.
Right. I think he says fun is the gun. Isn't that the line that he says? I think Moondog says that at one point. He says something about fun is the gun or something along those lines.
Fun is the gun?
As kind of his philosophy. It was toward the end of the movie, and I think the line is fun is the gun. I could be wrong, but...
Well, it fits. There's because it's a modern movie, it's a little bit transgressive to see it in the theater and be like, oh, okay, well, this is just like, tits and ass are great. Let's surround ourselves with that, and also money, and and which is, again, I sound like a Puritan saying it, and I think I may, to some extent, be a prude and a Puritan. But there's also just, I wish it would have been a little bit more clever and a little bit more quicker, and if it had put him through more paces. There's, okay, we'll get into spoilers. There's, he goes dance. He gets jealous that Snoop Dogg, he skates for the first 25 minutes. Then he figures out Snoop Dogg is sleeping with his wife, despite the fact he sleeps with all numbers of people. And then he basically just goes drinking with her. She seems to realize that he needs some attention after he sulks off. And then they get so drunk, they wreck, and she dies, which is very funny. Because it's like, she just says, you're a fuck up, and dies. And he goes, aw, as the hospital thing beeps. And it's very dark and good. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, again, there doesn't need to be consequences for having fun. And again, that's why I sound like a scold. But there does need to be some sense of how constant drinking is sustainable. I guess he definitely had an addiction problem.
Right.
But the idea of being McConaughey on the beach is what we should all strive to be. Is like somebody who plays with bongos, has fun, makes art, and does not openly be that terrible to people. I mean, it's revolutionary to drink, carouse, and waste your time if you're not blowing people up, stealing from people, not killing people, not mistreating people, which is a lot of what happens in society. And if you drink, you are not doing that. But
yeah, like I was wondering, there's a moment probably about 45 minutes in, I guess it was the moment when his wife actually dies, and that was the moment where I kind of actually looked at my watch and I was like, okay, now the fun times are over, and now we're going to be in for like 50 minutes of him paying for it in some way. And honestly, like by the end of the movie, I was very happy to see him not pay in any way. Now, granted, if this was a real story, you would know that consequences are probably on the way for him. But we don't have to see it in the movie. I don't think that it has to be in the movie in order to know that that kind of lifestyle probably isn't sustainable. Maybe it is.
I mean,
and he should face consequences for the way he treated other people. But you do have a feeling, even watching movies in 2019, where you see a character who's having too much fun, and you're expecting, okay, well, they shouldn't be having this much fun. Beyond, I mean, just take out him treating people very poorly and not having really any empathy, particularly, beyond just drunken connections that he makes with people. But, I just think that it's not, I was very happy to see him not necessarily suffer any consequences in a way. Even though he's not a great person, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't stand by everything he did, and I wouldn't say that those are all good things that he did. There were a lot of bad things he did, but I just appreciate that there was not a moment in the movie where it says, okay, now he has to pay for this.
Yeah.
In quite the way that Spring Breakers did, even though I like Spring Breakers as a movie more. But I did appreciate that he just kind of drifted off, and by the end that he was literally drifting away in a boat.
Well, a direct punishment would have been too much, and he's a fictional character. He can do terrible things, and we're free of guilt for watching and enjoying his antics. But there's the ending of the movie. We will now spoil the ending of the movie. You really can't spoil this movie.
No,
you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
But just like the Joker in The Dark Knight Returns, he takes a huge $50 million and sets it on fire, and then laughs.
Is that the same amount of money?
I don't know if it's $50 million that he sets on fire, but it's a large cubic stacked, we're told, millions. And the Joker does that for chaos. Mm-hmm. And McConaughey is just floating in a boat with his kitten. I was thinking, I would have liked for the kitten to have died. I
thought they had both died, but then I thought for sure the kitten. They kind of made you think the kitten was going to die for sure.
Yeah, but he has a kitten that he just picks up and then drunkenly adopts for the rest of the movie. And the kitten is sitting on the pile of money when he points a firecracker at it and explodes it, and then sets on the boat that they're on. And but it's very happy. There's no one on the boat who's a casualty. No. He gets away. He floats away with his kitten, and there's this wonderful close up of him just laughing. And the movie is full of the soundtrack of hit songs that hit my nostalgia bone, and I imagine they hit Trip's nostalgia bone.
Yeah, Right Down the Line by Jerry Rafferty. Yeah, I mean, God, yeah, hearing that, and the Bertie Higgins song was great. I think there was one or two Jimmy Buffett songs, but it wasn't overloaded with Jimmy Buffett.
Well, there's a live Buffett performance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. It's interesting to see classic rock songs juxtaposed against Bad Behavior. You hear them on the radio, and the only juxtaposition is usually your car drive. But this is cocaine and people, doing bad or sleazy atmosphere, which again seems like the true nature of some of those songs, or just the atmosphere of those songs. Rock 103, it just kind of Jerry Rafferty is it's a lovely song, but it's just and it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with cocaine, and neither does any of the Jimmy Buffett work, but it just, there's an atmosphere to him. We see Bertie Higgins as an old man, and then we see him in the Bogey and Bacall music video where he's smoking a cigarette and singing and being ridiculous, and he eventually began to produce cocaine movies or something, movies about cocaine smuggling or something. He became some type of producer of movies and something to do with cocaine. But regardless, there's an aspect to a freedom to seeing some of this stuff.
Yeah, like I'm also a huge fan of like sun bleached kind of movies. I really love a lot of those kind of movies. Even if the movie itself isn't that great, I just enjoy watching them. Like I just enjoy the experience of watching I love summer, and so I enjoy like a good sun bleached kind of escape kind of movie like that, or I like the movie 92 in the Shade. It's not a great movie, but I appreciate the sun bleached elements of it, and some of the things like that were also a kind of hallmark of a lot of 70s movies, where it's just people are out in the sun, sweating, drinking, doing all that kind of stuff. I just enjoy all that. And
It's
so
a Warren Oates, Harry Dean Stanton movie.
yes, yeah, Peter Fonda, and I'm just a big fan of that kind of feel for a movie, and so that this obviously captured that very
A lot
well.
of really wonderful. He didn't hold on shots too long. There was a lot of cutting, and it was really there were these beautiful shots where the camera would move and the sunlight would change as it moved, and it was very beautiful. And again, makes you think of the Sean Baker movies like Florida Project or Tangerine.
I thought of Florida Project a few times during the movie.
Yeah, but it doesn't have that bite that Spring Breakers or Florida Project or Tangerine has. It has a little bit more of it's a little bit more of just like a happy-go-lucky, this is fun performance from Matthew McConaughey, but it doesn't really lead to a concrete place. Again, the most concrete thing that happens is, and we're going to spoil the best moment in the movie, which is Martin Lawrence's, and I think I've also seen that mentioned before we came, because I didn't expect to go see this, but I was like, this would be a good movie to watch. But Martin Lawrence, he plays a dolphin boat ride person that McConaughey goes to as Lois. But I also want to point out that McConaughey possibly gets angry at his wife and kills her. Not maybe consciously, but subconsciously. Like to me, like there's an aspect of revenge upon Snoop Dogg for sleeping with his wife, even though everything's great. But it's just like there's almost like an unconscious whispers granted, like he can cheat on her, but she can't cheat on him, and then she must die. I mean, sometimes that happens in stuff, and likewise with Martin Lawrence, he meets Martin Lawrence at a low point where he needs money, and they go on their dolphin tour.
Yeah, it's like a dolphin. Yeah, it takes people out on a boat, and then they go see dolphins.
And they take a family, the Lipschitzes, out on a boat.
Which is also a name of like a person from an 80s teen sex comedy or something. Lipschitz, the Lipschitz family, the Lipschitzes.
Yeah.
Just that it kind of reveled in that silly name, or the silliness of that name being said several times anyway. And so, yeah, that part I appreciated as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
But out on the boat, we learned that Martin Lawrence is not aware that dolphins are not sharks, which is an incredibly dumb joke.
I was also you kind of skated over. I was a big fan of the point where he's explaining to Matthew McConaughey or Moondog. He's explaining to him how he does his thing, and he's saying, when I see a dolphin, I'm acting excited as shit. Like I've never seen a dolphin in my life. Like I'm super happy. Just watch. That's why I'm so successful, is because I'm very good at being excited about dolphins. There's some scenes where before they take the family out on the boat also, where it seemed improvised, but I'm not really sure.
It probably was.
Where they're saying, I can usually tell by the first thing or two they say to me whether or not they're serious about dolphins, and there's like a little.
He says, "I like Flipper as a kid," yeah. And there's only been 4 deaths in 8 years of dolphin tours.
And by some sort of what does he say? He says, he got his license pulled several times, and then just by some sort of loophole that he didn't understand, he kept getting it back.
Yeah.
And he's had several deaths on his tours. It was just great.
And then of course, ludicrously, he has no idea that sharks are not dolphins. He jumps into the lake and he promptly gets his leg bitten off, but everything's okay, and McConaughey can take his captain's hat. Yes. It's like, again,
he literally hands him his foot when they're leaving in the ambulance, and he says, "Yeah, I can't stay with you, man. I'm leaving." And then he hands him his foot, and he just sits it on his chest. And then Martin Lawrence kind of has a moment of like, we had a good time together. And then he looks at his foot and almost throws up, and that's kind of the end of Martin Lawrence. And it's just wonderful. Like that. I think I would have liked the whole movie to be Martin Lawrence and Matthew McConaughey's character just hanging out the whole movie. I think I would have liked that, but it was just perfect for the time that he was there. I mean,
It was concise.
it was very concise,
Unlike the rest of the movie.
Yes.
Saying that out loud makes me realize just how goofy it was and how silly it was. And again, it makes me feel like a moral scold for even thinking of like the idea of it. You know, like maybe there's not supposed to be that much thought to it that you're supposed to take to it. Like he's a Looney Tunes character.
Right. Yeah. And one of the interesting things with that, watching it just now, we just watched it at the Paradiso. Studio on the Square. And it was a pretty good amount of people in the audience, which I was kind of surprised by. And then there was like a big group that I think they were all together, and they were all like singing the songs as they were coming on and things, and that kind of made it even more of a surreal experience where you don't really hear that a lot. But yeah, we were in the theater and there was probably 10 people singing Cure songs, or they liked The Cure, they liked Jimmy Buffett, they liked Margaritaville.
Yeah.
What was the song by The Cure that was on there? It was
Just Like Honey.
Yeah,
No, maybe.
No,
it wasn't that's lost in translation.
It's Jesus and Mary Chain, but
sorry.
I think, but
no, you're absolutely right.
It's Tell Me How You Do That Thing or whatever. Anyway, they were a fan of that, and so the sing-alongs in the theater was interesting. I had the only thing when I Googled to look up the movie and to look for like showing times today was that I had seen the 2 user reviews that popped up on Google on the like little side there. Both of them were saying they got up and left the theater during the movie, and they hated it so much, and this was way below Matthew McConaughey to do a movie like this, and they both got up and left the theater. And when I read that, it actually gave me more hope for the movie, because I have a very good, like, in general, I've been in a lot of movies, and the few that I've been in where people will get up and leave, most of the time I really like those movies. And so I was kind of thinking, well, there's a pretty good amount of people in here. Everybody seems to be having a good time, even before the movie started. And so I thought, I bet some of these people are going to leave. And no one did, and everybody seemed to enjoy it till the end. And yeah, the sing-alongs were interesting. That was fun.
Yeah.
If it would have been another movie, I probably would have been irritated by all the crowd singing and talking and everything, but actually it made it better. I think it improved the experience of watching the movie.
I agree. I didn't even notice much of that. I noticed that the people to our left were more talkative as the movie went on. Like they felt much more relaxed. Like if there was a quiet scene, they were like, we can just talk during this part. and there's a couple to our right, and he got up a lot, and I was like, are they leaving? Because they seemed to be taking it a little bit more seriously and less laughing. But they didn't leave, as you pointed out.
No, it was a pretty full theater. Like I said, I don't think that it's been very successful from the little that I read, but so far. But yeah, it was the crowd was great.
Which is unfortunate, because at least a lot of times McConaughey is a great actor, but I guess I can say that he's a very good actor.
Oh, I think he's great.
But he often takes roles which I feel like are coded in like kind of a blockbuster thing, where like he often doesn't get a good role. He gets a role that's like Oscar bait or something. And this one was definitely refreshing in that it didn't have a moral, and where an Oscar bait film would. Mm-hmm. And so it was a better project for him. Because it makes me think of his most lauded performance in like the last 10 years is True Detective, which ends with this total negation of everything before it at the end of that first season, where he's like has this hopeful, optimistic thing about the world after spending like 8 episodes of just nihilism, this beautifully delivered nihilism. Mm-hmm. But then you get this like homily at the end where it's like, cheer up, everything's going to be okay because we try hard, and that was false. Yeah. And this was all of a piece, and like you said, there was no punishment, which was good.
Yeah.
But it was just like, if the ending is telling us that we should set our personal $50 million on fire, again, that seems like it's a relatable problem. It's not relatable. It's just like it's so metaphorical that it doesn't exist for anybody. Like
Right.
no one has $50 million except for a few people. In terms of Harmony Korine, though, like this wasn't as good as some of his early works like Julian Donkey Boy or Gummo or I forget what else, but he had more interesting things to say and said them weirder and with more changes between the things that happened when he was younger. I will now brag. Thanks to a friend named Cole, I was able to premiere a short documentary called Ronnie and Jessica at the old High Tone in front of the Memphis premiere of Trash Humpers.
I was going to ask if you'd watched Trash Humpers.
But I have watched Trash Humpers, and I didn't love Trash Humpers. In fact, I would go so far to say that Trash Humpers is hard to sit through.
Yeah.
In fact, it's incredibly hard to sit through, and I sat there through the whole fucking thing because I was fucking, But what I would like to say is that this doesn't have the squirminess of that almost. Like there's some minor squirminess, but it's almost, if you tweaked it a little bit, you would get a bro comedy about the importance of valuing being a bro over money, which is astounding for him to make. And like that's not what you get from Spring Breakers. You don't want him to make, it's not like, all right, well, let's get more tits and ass in here and more cocaine. That'll make a good movie. Or more sun-drenched imagery. It's just there needs to be a little bit more of a bite to it, I think, to make it more than just a hangout movie.
Yeah.
But as a hangout movie, who knows? And these problems I feel are maybe my own that I'm just taking to this movie, and I don't think that it necessarily has a whole lot to do with the actual movie. It seemed like a movie that was pretty sure of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like Spring Breakers was one of my favorite movies of the last probably 5 or 10 years, whatever. It would be one of my favorite movies of that time period. And like I said, I didn't think this one was as well made or as it didn't impact me in the way that this felt more minor in a way. But it was still. I still really got a lot out of it, and there was still a lot to appreciate. I still really liked it a lot. Could have been made any time. It could have been made in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, like Ben said. But I do feel like there was something that kind of resonated with 2019 in the kind of nothing really matters. What sort of nihilism of the era. I do think that it does say something about the time we live in now. I guess nihilism is something that can be applied to a lot of different eras that we've lived through. But I would say this time is a very, it's either, I think people either run to, we have to make changes and we need to change the world that we're seeing now, and then there's other people who just say, we tried and now we just have to go into excess or nihilism or whatever.
Or we party.
Exactly. Now we party and just say, oh well, this is for someone else to deal with later. And I think that's something about the movie that felt very of the time for me anyway. It was, and I do think it did a great job of capturing kind of the feeling of being drunk and being high and all these things. I do feel like that it didn't feel like it is a cartoon in a way, but then also I felt like some of the way that Matthew McConaughey acts and some of the other characters act in the movie, it did feel very I felt like it was very realistic as far as the way that it portrayed that feeling of being high, being drunk, and just kind of muttering to yourself and having these thoughts and thinking these things, and making these connections with people that maybe aren't long lasting, but they do feel great in the moment.
Yeah.
That from something that's like a social kind of lubricant like alcohol or weed or whatever, or cocaine, all those kind of things. It did kind of did it. I thought it did a good job of kind of showing how that those things can, in the moment, feel a certain way. And
yeah, you're absolutely right. And everyone was his friend, literally.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went,
Yes.
everyone knew him and loved him.
Yes, he was like kissing people on the lips, kissing them, and he was hugging people that they had not established in any way that he knew before, and I thought that was very astute. I thought it was a good observation of the way that feels.
Yeah, he had a very high ratio of not being kicked out of places, not being hit, not being punched, not being...
No, you expect, there are moments where, he does things where he does kiss someone or does something like that, and you're waiting for him to be punched or slapped or something, but no, everyone welcomes him and everybody's happy to see him and everybody
is attracted to him.
Yes, they appreciate who he is as a person. And every once in a while they'll show you, like the limp dick guy, the guy that is
the fiance of his daughter.
Yeah, that she's marrying, and then the attorney, and then even the agent, who's kind of doing his own thing, Jonah Hill.
He's in a different strip bar.
Yeah, exactly. But they're all kind of portrayed as like these squares who kind of are, at one point the guy that marries his daughter is literally holding a big glass of milk, standing on the balcony, and it's just, and he's, there. He
makes fun of him for drinking milk.
Yeah, he does. And yeah, it's just I don't know. I appreciated the. There are a few characters that are thrown in to kind of show you the way that the actual world would probably look at a character like him. That there would just be kind of disgusted or put off or want to get away. But then most of the people in the context of the movie, at one point in the movie, he says, his wife tells him, "You got to come back home. What are you doing down there?" And he says, "I gotta get it with the burnouts. I gotta get low to get high. I gotta go low to get high.
I'm a bottom fever baby."
Yeah, that's what he says. It's just a great line, and so I think that kind of idea is very well kind of fleshed out in the movie, and the world that's kind of he puts around himself. Whether it's that he flies to Jamaica at one point, and the pilot, they say, well, he's like 98% blind, glaucoma really bad in both eyes.
He removes his sunglasses and shows that he has white eyes, and he's smoking a
gigantic
spliff, I guess, and he's just like, it's the size of a cigar.
Yeah, and he just says, I can't really see, and then he's just like, all right, let's just do this. And it's just a character after character like that, where it's just he's surrounded himself with other weirdos or people who have had problems, or people who are also into excess for what, at least in the moment. And I thought that was great. His reception in general from the world, and then even in the moments where it's really funny, where he's up on stage giving this acceptance speech for this award that I think he won the Pulitzer or something.
I don't know. It seemed like he was up for a Pulitzer, but I don't know if that was the Pulitzer ceremony.
Yeah, and so he's up getting in this ceremony, and he's giving this speech, and there's all these people sitting at these tables, and they're applauding him, and they're all dressed up nice. And so that is kind of the more respectable world patting him on the back and saying, we like what you've done. And his daughter is very proud of him.
Yeah, she forgives him.
Yeah.
After spending the whole movie disapproving of him for killing her mother.
Yes. And so that's very dreamlike also. That whole scene is very dreamlike. It's also weird because it's an award ceremony. It's supposed to be a big moment, but it's kind of in a smaller room. So there was just things like that where I don't know if that was just a restriction of making the movie, where I don't know if it costs more to have more extras and everything, and but I don't know. But it was like a smaller room, but it did seem like it was supposed to be a prestigious award, and there were very prestigious looking people saying, "Oh, Moondog has won this award." But yeah, I really liked the way that he was received. I'd have to say that. Like, I just appreciated in general the world receiving him with open arms like that.
And like with that plane that we were talking about, flown by the blind man, he landed perfectly safely.
It's incredible. It's just time after time you're waiting for that moment where it's like, okay, the hammer's gonna fall, and it just doesn't. And it was great. I was laughing most of the movie. I was very entertained and very just kind of tickled by the whole thing. Like, it just really kept doubling down on, nope, he will not face consequences for this. And anytime any consequences come close, it's not really that bad. Even when he does get arrested at one point, and when he's getting arrested, he's just joking around with the cops and just saying, is this what you came here for? Or is this why you went to the academy, is to arrest people like me in my wife's closet, wearing her boots? And at one point, I'm guessing it was the one of the actors playing the cop, but he kind of laughs, and I couldn't tell if he was supposed to be laughing because that was actually supposed to be that he's making these cops laugh, or whether or not the actor just broke character and laughed. But at one point I could see he was kind of laughing. But yeah, even, I don't know, just stuff like that. Even the moment where he's facing arrest, he's still just kind of the same kind of, burnout, and still the same kind of just joking, having fun kind of guy and everybody kind of seemed to enjoy it.
Again, just hearing you speak it out loud, it seems ridiculous to expect any type of moral gravity from the film, and I realize it's maybe ridiculous for me to think of that, but it reminds me of Werner Herzog's Port of Call, or Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, which we watched recently. Is one
of my favorites. I love it.
It has a similar trajectory, but there's a lot more danger of punishment for bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
In that movie, Nicolas Cage is supposedly acting out a different drug in every scene, and he's playing a very mean cop, but you end up in this loony world, you kind of come around to him, and he's not that bad. And I don't know, this movie to me needed a little bit more danger, but it could be that something that I'm revisiting that I would not care and just enjoy the performance.
Yeah, and Spring Breakers had a lot more danger. And I think that's what maybe why this one felt more of a minor work in a way, because there weren't any stakes. But then in another way, I appreciated it for not having much, the stakes being very low.
I wouldn't want to see a third in the trilogy of sun-dappled Florida excess films by Harmony Korine. I'd like to see more Tennessean rural depravity stuff. Or set that I think Gummo was set in Xenia, Ohio, but filmed in Nashville. I'm not exactly sure, but I enjoyed the movie, and I think in talking to you about it, I think I have less criticism of the movie, though I still feel it's a little bit of a goof, and it's like I'm not in on the joke, and so I feel a little bit left out, but perhaps I can come around to it. But do you want to say anything else on the movie?
No, not that I know of. Like I said, I just appreciated it. I thought it was very good. I would like to see more movies in general like this. Like these are the kind of movies that I like watching. I don't know.
Which are movies that are character-based?
That are very character-based. The plot is very loose. Like I said, the just kind of new Hollywood 1970s, very heavy, Payday with Rip Torn, movies like that, where it's very character-based, and it's just following him through these series of through the world for a little bit, and you're just kind of there with them, and I like that. I like that in a movie.
This movie made me think of Rip Torn and Summer Rental, where he owns a boat named Barnacle and a restaurant named Barnacle, and he is claiming to having a missing hand, but he clearly does not have a missing hand. He's supposed to be a pirate, and he's helping John Candy, who's on vacation in the 80s, from being too stressed out as an air traffic controller, and he's just a very debaucherous and seemingly lying person who's claiming to be a pirate and boat captain, but he turns out to be all right. I would like to thank the Malco security for not being around tonight, so we can sit here in this parking lot behind, I think, Dapple's haircut and just talk forever with the light on so we can see our faces. This is a pretty good conversation. I think you won me over to the film. I think I'm pretty much coming around to it. I don't know if my criticisms have a whole lot of purpose with regards to this film. It seemed to know what it was.
I think it was very self-assured, like you said. I think it knew what it wanted to do, and it did it. I was hoping it would be kind of a lesser Spring Breakers, and it really was, but it was even better than what I expected.
Well, I agree with that. It was a lesser Spring Breakers, and I wanted even to shoot higher. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you to Piano and Pictures, and again, thank you to Malco Security for not messing with us. And shout out to Chris Stewart, who really loves the movie Spring Breakers, and is probably maybe the only person who'll be watching this far into the video. So thank you, Chris, for watching.
Hey, Chris.
And and thank you.